purpose is about being on the move in some direction. You have something that you're looking to go do, that you're excited about. It may be just self-fulfilling. It may not have nothing to do with helping others. The purpose might be to get me out of this lost state that I'm in and give me some movement to somewhere. I may not know the full destination, but I know I'm moving in that direction. You don't really recognize what that pearl of wisdom really meant, maybe until 10 years later, when, okay, I've matured, my experiences have evolved. Now I understand what that person was talking about. Likewise, with a accumulation of your life's experience that then can be applied, man, it's gratifying. It's like, wow, everything was worth the ride, because now you can almost pay back. And that's where I get my return, right? Is by being able to take those lessons in life and business and family and leverage it and pay it back and help others more efficiently through those challenges.
Welcome to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we help mentor you into becoming a more successful version of yourself. We do this through giving you access to mentors you typically would never have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their experiences, their life-changing events, their fields of expertise, and most importantly, their purpose. My name is Harry Goldberg, husband to an incredible woman, father of 2 amazing daughters, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast. And now, just before we learn from yet another exceptional guest, if you find value from these conversations, please make sure to like and subscribe below, leave a review. It really does make a difference. And of course, share it with someone else who's going to find value. Now, listen in, pay attention, take some notes, enjoy. Let's begin. Bobby Feigler, welcome.
What's happening, Harry?
I'm excited for this. So basically, since we were introduced by a mutual friend of ours and a fellow guest on the podcast, the reason I've been looking forward to this conversation is that you've taken a key leadership role in nearly every step of your career, both in the military, in co-founding SciQuest, and actually in all the roles since. So it also takes a pretty impressive leader to then take the presidency and then CEO of the company that took over his former employer, right? In essence, for the listeners, we're going to dive into Bobby's story. But overarching is that he's rapidly been building businesses throughout his whole life. He's been married for 40 years. He's got 2 adult children. One's an entrepreneur and one's an attorney. And we're going to explore lots of different messages and learnings that he's had along the way. Bobby, how do you define success?
How do I define success? Well, I'm coming to you guys from New Orleans, and that's a big question to kick into gear here, Harry. Thank you. For me, it's always been about what is potential. And for me, success is achieving our full potential as human beings. And so, honestly, I may never get to full success, and it's a journey. But certainly, if you can reckon with what your individual potential is and strive towards that, you're on a journey of success in my book.
How do you recognize what your potential is?
I think it's about, looking at what's possible and saying, why not me? And so whether it's in school, whether it's in business, whether it's in, partnering with a significant other, you say, what is possible? What does good look like? And why can't it be me that achieves that on each one of those turns? And so for me, it's about just some self-reflection, looking at folks that I've known in my life that have demonstrated success and folks that have hit their potential and are contributing back to their family and friends and are making a real difference each and every day. And they have a sense of fulfillment, because you always are on this journey trying to strive to improve yourself, to become better at what you're doing in life. And I think success is when you've, obtained a level of satisfaction really through the eyes of others, that allows you to feel, I'm really contributing now. I'm really making a difference in people's lives.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you about that idea of satisfaction through the eyes of others especially. But I'm still curious about this potential, identifying it. Maybe can you give an example from from, I don't know, you mentioned school, you mentioned business, you mentioned marriage. Like, how do you define potential so that you can move closer towards it?
Yeah, I mean, in my life, it's I can reflect on a number of things, right? I mean, as a kid, you know, as a Boy Scout, the highest level was an Eagle Scout. And I mean, why can't I be an Eagle Scout? Because that was reflected as, in this organization, hitting your full potential. I was able to achieve that at 13 years old. In high school, average student, average wrestler. I was saying, hey, why can't I be the champion? Want to be the state champion and the most valuable wrestler in my senior year. Not expected. I wasn't like, 32 and 0 record. I was average, but I knew what success, I knew what my full potential was. You know, in the military, coming out of school, I chose to be an infantry officer. The highest level for a young infantry officer was to be through the Ranger School, through the Ranger program. That to me was a very identifiable level of achieving potential for where I was at in my life at that point in time. A relationship, a marriage, right? No relationship or marriage is easy. You go through your ups and downs, but you've got to commit to it and achieve full potential, which is a full journey without giving up, with achieving a relationship that lasts a lifetime. To me, that's potential, right? It's like, what is the ultimate in self-realization in terms of, okay, I was able to overcome this barrier, this hurdle, and I've achieved what I determined to be my full potential. And it's often, even greater when it's recognized by external forces that says, yeah, he is really, really on stride to achieve full potential, when it's identified by what he's able to do for others now, that he's at potential. So I don't know. I think it's a self-realization, but it's also it's driven by external measures, really, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there's measures in everything in our life. And, whether it's education levels, whether it's things we do with our religions and churches, things what we do with our family, what do they write about you when you're long gone, right? I mean, was he able to achieve his full potential in his life, or did he waste it away? I'm energized by the concept because when I talk about potential, with leadership groups, I think our full and most important job is to help individuals achieve their full potential as individuals, which creates team success.
Hmm. All right, this is really cool, and just to play devil's advocate to try and get the perspective. Imagine you're speaking to people who are mostly in their 30s and 40s, and so they're younger generation than yourself, and a lot of them are starting to feel like, well, I pursued all of these aspects of success where it was measured externally, and I'm doing really well because all these people are saying that I'm doing really well, right? I did the best in my school. I did the best in wrestling. I've done it. I don't know, whatever, right? I got to the best university and I passed with flying colors and all of that. I got the great job and everything. And then they start to see, well, hang on a second. There are some competing interests here. Hey, I'm doing really well in my career, but that's because I'm putting all of this time and energy into it. But then now I've got kids. What about my kids? I got to spend more time and energy there. I don't know if I can fulfill my potential in both my marriage, in my parenting, and in my career, and in my health, and all these different elements. And then I'm saying, well, hang on. If I'm adopting this perspective of my success is achieving my potential, but then I could achieve so much more in my career if I didn't even have to worry about my family. Or I could achieve so much more with my kids if I didn't have to worry about my career. Or I could achieve so much more in my marriage if we didn't have to be fighting about X, Y, and Z or conflicting about these particular things. How do you balance that? Because as you're young and you don't have that many responsibilities, it's kind of like, yeah, cool, you've got school or you've got a little bit of work and you're just trying to do the best you can. You don't have mouths to feed and other people dependent on you. How can you then start to achieve your potential in all these different elements, and how do you decide where to put your energy in?
Yeah, I think, from my journey in my life, I mean, it's all connected, right? I mean, it's not like you can compartmentalize my potential for my professional career, or my potential as a father, or my potential as a husband, my potential as a partner with my business associates, right? To me, the potential discussion is foundational, and it's tied to everything we endeavor in our lives. And I think achievement of potential at different states in your life, right? When you're a young person, when you're a young adult, middle age, getting into the senior years, it's an accumulation. It's cumulative, right? Potential is not something we just like weigh or measure and say, when I was 18, I achieved potential. When I was 26, I missed my potential. When I was 32, I hit my potential. Well, I mean, no, it's all connected. It's a bit of a journey to potential, and the the elements of our life are all it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset that says, I believe I can be great as a father, as a son, as a husband, as a business person. And the intensity of my desire to be a great father is the same intensity that I have to be a great business professional or to be a great friend. I mean, it's to me it's so interconnected, the notion of potential, and it's foundational. It's like it's a mindset. It's like, okay, we all can like look at a picture of what we think is great in various aspects of our life, but how does that apply to other aspects of our life, right? So if you look at, as a business person, okay, well, what's success? Is it monetary? Is it the role? Is it the level you achieve to? Um, or is it more than that? Is it more about what you've left behind? Who have you developed? Are they going to become great? Are they going to hit their full potential? Your friends, I mean, how do you become, how do you hit your full potential as a true friend? I think a lot of the drivers of achieving potential are the same drivers regardless of sort of the area or the objective, personal fitness, personal health, professional fitness, professional health. I really believe that it's all intertwined, and we don't measure it by distinct parts of our life experience, but it's all an interconnected journey that we go through to hit potential. But when you hit it, it's applicable and stretchable to other parts of your life.
So the skills that you learn in, like when striving to achieve your potential as a great friend, or in your health, or as a father, is going to be attributable to being a better husband and you doing better in business and in those
Yeah,
areas.
sure. Like, I mean, like if I know that by being a good listener in business allows me to be a more thoughtful leader in business, well, okay, and I've got demonstrated success by way of that, or if my ability to show sincere interest in others and take the time to show that allows me to achieve success in, say, friendship with friends or family. Those same things are directly applicable in nearly every facet of my life. And so I do think that the things that we do, that we strive for in terms of behaviors, um, while the circumstance and the environment is different, a lot of times our intent is the same. It's a different level of relationship. Some of it may be motivated by different things, money, love, need for compassionate relationship, or whatever it might be. But the things that we do that help us to achieve success, I don't know. I look at it as very similar across the facets of my life. And I use the listening as just an example. People always say, Bobby, you just get energy from people, and I do. I mean, I'm like I can plug into people, and I get so much energy through others. But it's the same thing, if I'm around my daughter or my son, I'm so more energized after I'm around them, or with my wife, and it's the same. When I'm at work, I'm energized by people. No different than when I'm energized when I go, on a social event with my friends. That gives me gratitude. That gives me happiness. Something in that relationship empowers me.
Okay, so you mentioned before that it's about the mindset and the mindset towards achieving your potential. And I'm still trying to understand the difference in your mind. I think I've got an idea, but I'm trying to understand the difference in your mind between the mindset towards potential and then the external kind of validation of you moving towards your potential. I'm trying to piece those two together because the internal and the external are two very different things. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about how you, I mean, you shared a little bit about your personality tends to be more towards others and where you fit in with the tribe and around others, and you're energized by being around other people, and you assess your values based on how much it's been, or your value based on how much you've been impacting other people positively and what they say about you when you're gone. But how do you piece those two together? How do you pursue your potential as a mindset, but measure based on based on external factors?
Right. It's almost like a reinforcing mechanism where, you know, I guess it starts with like, it's almost, you've got to have a bit of a competitive nature to have the notion of I'm going to self-identify what my potential is, and I'm going to be extremely disciplined throughout my life to continue to drive towards that. And that potential for some is sort of an imaginary line, right? It's a line that we make up based upon our experiences, maybe our forefathers, maybe from people we've respected, maybe religious figures, whatever it might be, right? So we set this notion of potential, and that's an external thing. But honestly, at least in my experience, when you say, why not me? Why can't I be the one that is the successor? Is the person people turn to? Is the person people include and want to be the leader in my case? It's almost a reinforcing mechanism that allows external forces to sort of reinforce this notion of an internally established what is Bobby's potential, right? So, and throughout life, hopefully, if you're focused on your potential, there will be signals of reinforcement. And it may be small ones over, a 40-year lifespan or whatever, a professional lifespan or an 80-year or a 90-year life that, you're driven by this internal perspective of what's possible as an individual. And it changes throughout your life, right? Because, what I thought I could do when I was 20 versus what I can do now that I'm 60 or 61 is different. But the energy that I have to achieve my potential at this phase of my life is no different than the energy when I had, was a young, business person, a young infantry officer. It's identical. And I get reinforcement externally by successes and failures, right? I mean, it's like it's not a cherry rose. I mean, we're going to travel through life. There's going to be disappointments, and that's okay, right? Because as long as you believe you can achieve a place that you will be happy with, that defines you in yourself, in your soul, as you've done the best for your family and yourself, and you feel that you've had a successful life, then so be it. The challenges we face in life are just indicators that we have to, step up our game. We've got to adjust. We have to maybe try another path, and that's okay.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's explore a little bit more about your journey. So our listeners don't know that much about you other than what I introduced in the beginning. What have been kind of some of the key highlights or the key milestones in your journey from where you grew up, a little bit about what that was like, and let's keep it reasonably brief, a little bit of what that was like, how you progressed through your career, and then all the different some of the different stages and phases, and then where you're at now, and just give the listeners a little bit of a background of some of the moments you've gone through in your life and how some of those moments have really defined success for you.
It really started right where I'm sitting right now, a suburb of New Orleans, and I was the youngest of five. Mom and dad both from here, and they were working full time all the time. I just remember, it's always chaos around my house with older siblings, and but we always ran as a pack. We were always watching out for one another, and that's been a marked thing in my life is to look out for those that I love and be available for them always. And we're still very, very close, all five of us, the siblings. I remember, my dad and my mom, just basic things in life, make a difference, be respectful of others, always think about the other person's, place and where they're coming from before you make an opinion of them. And just, try to do the best in every endeavor. I think that's carried with me my whole life, right? It's just make a difference and don't feel like you're limited. I high school here in New Orleans, average student, junior year in high school, thinking about what I was going to do after. A friend of mine's father was retired from the Marine Corps. I learned about the different academies here in the U.S., military academies, and actually chose to go ROTC. Was fortunate enough to again sort of reach for the stars. I got a full ride on a ROTC scholarship. Chose to stay here in town at Loyola University. As I mentioned at the top, was involved heavily with wrestling in high school and was very fortunate to do well in that. I spent 4 years in the university, and my love of my life, Jean, we got married right after I graduated. I graduated I think a Thursday. I got commissioned as second lieutenant. That's next day, and that weekend I got married, and all within like 3 days we left town 2 weeks later and was away for like 28 years. So it was a dramatic change when all my buddies, they were still going to graduate school and whatnot, and I was starting my life, with Jean. That was a huge day in my life. It was like, okay, now it's time to go make your way. Had a great experience, fortunately for myself in the military. I learned a lot about leadership. And, to me, the leadership lessons early in my career were about, you've got to be willing to set a standard, even if that means going against, what the group think is. You've got to be able to deal with conflict in a respectful way. And, ultimately, you've got to help each person in your team find success. And that's so important in all aspects of life, but especially in the military. And so I learned that early on, as a young person in my early 20s. Came out of the service after 6 years or so and worked as a manager for Baxter Healthcare in Charlotte. Did that for a couple of years, running a big distribution center, and then was asked by one of the customers who would come to visit, hey, who actually he recommended me to the manager. He says, we want Bobby to be our sales rep. And so we relocated up to the Research Triangle Park of North Carolina. Really never thought I'd be in sales, but it was a people game, right? It was all about going out and talking to people. And I've always loved engaging with people and getting energy from others. And through that time, I met my future business partners, and I spent about 5 years working for a big company, and then we jumped out. Myself and three other guys jumped out and started a company called SciQuest. They were three bachelors, and I was married. I think with a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we jumped in and we started from scratch. Used a bunch of credit cards to get us going and friends and family dollars. If there was a way to raise money, we raised money over a period of about 4 years and wound up growing that company and actually being part of the leadership team that took that company public on NASDAQ right before the markets collapsed through the dot-com era in early 2000. But I did that for about a decade, and that was all about learning. I mean, that was all about, trusting your instinct, but, how do you build something from nothing, pretty much against all odds, as well as knowing as a leader, you don't have all the answers. And I learned that quickly. And being willing to let others come in that have bigger experiences and more successful experiences to help you achieve, success. And I think we were able to do that well during that time. And it was an unbelievable experience in that I came out as a junior officer, got a manager job, got a sales job, very successful in sales, started a company, and then after I was burnt out after about 10 years of doing that, wanted to go be a senior executive in a big company again. And so I went back into the large company just so I could sort of, you have career goals and aspirations. And so I had an opportunity to go work for a large company, Fisher Scientific, which became Thermo Fisher Scientific, and was a vice president for them. And became, after that, I was recruited away to become the chief marketplace officer at a federal government reverse auction marketplace up in Washington, D.C. One of our investors prior to that invited me to join a company where I spent a year in Africa helping a company launch an HIV diagnostics product in about 14 different countries on the continent. Just some great life experiences. And it's almost a full circle. My story is almost a full circle in that we were still coming back home a lot. I'd had this outside of experience, away from home where I was born and grew up. And my brother-in-law calls me one day and says, "Hey, we could use some help with the business." And so I felt, hey, I've got a pretty good experience set now, and I could probably contribute and give back a little bit. And plus, we wouldn't have to travel back to New Orleans 4 and 5 times a year. So we moved back home after 28 years of being away, and got involved with the current business we're in now, initially as a partner, and eventually when we recapitalized the business, they asked me to be the president and CEO, which is a seat I sit in now. And my experience to date has always been about learning from the past and good things and bad, and making the future better by way of that. And I can tell you, my success now is directly based upon my life's learnings through a variety of different experiences. And I'm so grateful now to be able to take those lessons I learned, over, 3 decades, and start to apply them and share those experiences with folks that are coming up. It's just, man, it's an amazing thing to be able to take your life's experiences, actually now leverage them and put them to work for the betterment of another group of people. So we're back here. Got two beautiful grandbabies now, with my son and daughter-in-law, and my daughter lives here as well, and she's a successful entrepreneur in her own right. My son's a very successful attorney, and it's a gratifying to be here with family and friends, and see the results of our family.
And I find that there are two things from that which I really want to pick on, and it's a beautiful journey and beautiful full circle. The first one is just this idea that you mentioned towards the end there, that you finally feel like you've got the knowledge and experience and wisdom and experience to be able to apply what you've learned to what you're doing, which is a crazy thing to hear, because you've had like a 40-something year career, and only now in your 60s you feel like you can really apply all the knowledge that you have.
It's crazy, huh? Yeah, a lot of times you're faking it based upon what you think is correct. And I think life is not, you can't just like read the recipe in life. I mean, you can't just like, oh, go to page 27 of the handbook, I need to do this now. Well, man, that was written by someone else based upon their circumstances and experience set and their environment. And yeah, I think what it is, though, my perspective is that you pick up all these things on your journey, right? And you may be an expert in a particular area, but when it starts to become a volume of learnings and experiences, and you match that with maturing thoughts and life's experiences that give you greater perspective. In some cases, it gives you greater empathy for the people around you and for considerations you have to make. You're really able to grab it all and apply it, right? And it actually, it's like a turbocharger on a sports car that allows your life experiences to turbocharge maybe someone else's life or an organization's future. And we've always had those discussions as people growing up in the world. You have somebody give you some pearls of wisdom at some point in your life,
Hmm.
and you're like, man, I'm not sure what that really means, but I appreciate it. And you don't really recognize what that pearl of wisdom really meant, maybe until 10 years later, when, okay, I've matured, my experiences have evolved. Now I understand what that person was talking about. Likewise, with a accumulation of your life's experience that then can be applied, man, it's gratifying. It's like, wow, it was everything was worth the ride because now you can almost pay back and apply, and that's where I get my return, right? Is by being able to take those lessons in life and business and family and and leverage it and pay it back and help others, move more efficiently through those challenges.
Okay. And the other part which I wanted to pick on, which is somewhat related as well, you said that when you're in the military, you learned how to deal with conflict in a respectful way. I'm now guessing that you've also learned how to do that even more effectively and more respectfully as you've gone through life. How do you deal with conflicts?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, making sure that we take a deep breath, right? And we pause and chill out, right? And try to, maybe take some of the passion out of the discussion, right? Because typically when there's disagreement and conflict, there's a fair amount of passion on both sides. So I think that's the first thing is try to chill the temperature a bit. And then secondly, and this is hard, right? I mean, I'm always whether I'm in conflict or whether I'm sort of the mediator of conflict, is try to be empathetic, man. Try to just put yourself in the other person's perspective for as much as you can and try to understand where they're coming from before you try to come up with a solution to the conflict. Because being aware of the other person's perspective and imagining yourself in that perspective, I think will give you a different dimension to consider. So, what I try to do when there's conflict is chill the waters, try to understand where that person's coming from, try to back up the conversation a bit, and restart a conversation that's calm, that's based upon mutual respect, and ultimately based upon, hey, we want to get to a result that's satisfactory for you and for me, and that's hard sometimes, right? Because there's conflict a lot in business. There's conflict a lot of times in our world. I do think if you don't consider the other person's situation, where they're coming from and where they're trying to get to, it's difficult to deal with conflict. But if you're able to do that and you're able to sincerely understand it and try to get to at least a sort of a midpoint, you may not get everything you want, and they may not get everything they want, but we're talking in a respectful way with one another, and we both are willing to compromise a bit. That's worked for me in terms of conflicting situations.
Yeah, okay. And then is that the same process that you apply regardless of the circumstance? As in a disagreement between your kids, a disagreement that you're having with someone at work, a conflict in your marriage? Is it the same approach?
Well, it's definitely the same approach in all of those cases of
Mm-hmm.
chilling the waters first, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sometimes you can get fired up, and with your even with adult kids, certainly less so with a spouse, at least in my case. But I think it's the first part for sure. I think the empathy part may not be to the same degree, but because we tend to have a much clearer and closer sort of proximity to their value system, sort of their thinking, their value system for sure. And so I think the empathy piece is probably more present in more personal the relationship is. You're probably more empathetic to the other person. But I do think understanding the other perspective, trying not to be bullheaded and be open-minded is part of it too, especially when it's a family relationship. It could be a spouse. It could be, you got to let down the rope sometimes. You can't. It can't be your way. You got to just understand the other perspective and say, hey, is it really worth it? Can we compromise? Or if I'm standing, on some point, I'm not going to compromise. At least be able to explain it in a calm, loving manner that allows the other person to understand where you're coming from. So I think so, man. I think so. I think a lot of it is handled differently, right? Because a personal relationship, you're okay with the emotional side of conversations more so than in a structured, formal environment like you have at business, where there are some boundaries on how personal you can really become with a coworker. So I think it's a bit different with the environment, but I think the foundations are very similar in terms of my approach to it.
Yeah, if you're in the military, you're unlikely to sit down and speak to one of your junior officers and go, "Oh, let's talk about how you're feeling here. You
Yeah,
two
no,
okay?"
no,
Yeah.
no. But you can calm the waters. You can try to seek to understand, how they got to the place they got to, and show some, listen, right? Listen, truly listen. Not maybe you may not agree, but you're listening and understanding, and I think that gets you halfway down the court. I mean, I think simply by being open-minded and listening, so that you do have an ability to understand one's perspective, is half the fight.
Mm. And how do you remember to do something, to do that in a situation which is so emotionally charged, like marriage, right? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are thinking, okay, great. It's easy to say that. If you're at work, everyone's there because they're focused on a particular objective. If you're running your business, if you're in a career, or if you're doing whatever, like I get it. That's fine. But then when you talk about something like marriage, like you end up being so at each other's throats because you're so close in proximity, and you can end up just being so much more intense of a conflict. How do you remember to chill the waters, take a deep breath, and I guess in your language be the leader in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a direct answer. I think it's more like it's like the long game, right? I mean, assuming that you believe in the long game and that this isn't just a one match, that we're in it, and we've made that commitment. So you've got to make the decision of, if it's a long game, you're in it for your life, then ultimately you're going to have to be open-minded. You're going to have to be willing to say you were wrong. You have to be willing to understand the other person's perspective, and you're going to have to compromise, and you're going to have to be honest in that compromise. And so I don't know, I don't know. I've had some hellacious conversations. We've been married like for 40 years in May, this coming May. So
Hmm.
what do you think you're going to have after 40 years? And I've known her since she was in like eighth grade. So, but we're best of friends. And I think most best friends probably have had some conflict situations. I know I've had conflict situations with all my siblings, so I think it's just like we're human beings. And so there's going to be conflict. So I think if you believe that, this is a partnership and you're in it for the long game, then you just figure a way to do it. And sometimes it's hard. But ultimately, I mean, what's the alternative, right? I mean, the alternative is what? Strike? I mean, call it
Mm.
a day? I mean, what? So I don't know if that answered the question or not,
No,
but
it does. It does. It's continue to remind yourself to look at the big picture, as in you're essentially enhancing your motivation to find a solution to the conflict. Yeah.
yeah, and it always feels so much better after the conflict. Oh God, thank goodness we got to resolution, and let's go get some sushi now.
Yeah, and I like that. In a previous chat that we had before we did this recording, you mentioned about the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants. You mentioned that a few times in that chat, actually. Do you want to share a little bit about what that means to you, what it means to you when you think about standing on the shoulders of giants, and how that applies to your life and your definition of success?
Yeah, there are, in my life, I've got several folks that I'll forever be grateful for. And, my first battalion commander, George Aldridge, I mean, it's just, he set an example of leadership, of respect, of great communication. of physical capability, of mental strength, and of just being a good person with a strong value system. And that was like 1987, right? A long time ago. And I
Yeah.
remember. I think about, my experience with Baxter Healthcare, a divisional president, um, my mom needing to be medevaced from New Orleans to San Francisco because of aneurysm in the brainstem. And this guy who didn't really know me took the extra effort on a Friday to arrange for a company jet, an air ambulance from Baxter Healthcare to fly my mom out to San Francisco. I think about my current state of, a business that is almost 8 decades old, 78 years old, that this family, GT Michele, his father, his brother, I mean, these guys built this business day in and day out over decades. All of these individuals have taught me things that allow me to to be where I'm at today, right? And so I think we all have those people in our life, right? I mean, I don't think anybody goes through life without unbelievable role models in some fashion. Somebody that makes a mark on you, that you'll leverage that, and in effect, you'll stand on their shoulders. They've taught you something. You're going to be better. You're going to raise up and be better and stronger probably than they were because of what they've done before you and what they were willing to share with you. And that's been my experience. And I think it allows us as human beings to understand the power of human relationships and how someone's life can continue on by way of sharing their experiences with you, because those folks that I mentioned, most of them are still alive, but not all of them, right? But in a way, they are, right? I mean, when you stand on the shoulder of a giant, that means they're still present. There's 80 years of contributions to the world. They're still present. I mean, they're with me because now I have the mantle I have to carry, and I've got to at a minimum be as respectful, as honest, as strong, as successful as they were. And that's for me, that's what that means, right? It's both a resource and an asset by having that experience of being able to stand on the shoulders of giants, but it's an immense responsibility because the bar is significant, it's high, but it gives me great gratitude, but it also gives me great you know, it gives me motivation, right, to be better than they were, and so that when I pass it on to the next, that hopefully they can look back and say, wow, I'm on the shoulders of others, and I am now have to raise the capability, the strength of this organization or this relationship. So that's where I was coming from.
I really admire this. A lot of people really struggle to find mentors. I mean, this is the reason that the podcast all started. When I was busy coaching people and helping them with their life plan and what they really wanted from their life, and encouraging them to go and get mentors. They're like, yeah, but I don't know how to find mentors and blah blah blah. Okay, great. Here's some of the ways to do it, and I share with them specifically how they can find these giants whose shoulders they can stand on. Right? Like, who are these people that they can look up to and whom they can really learn from and from their journey. And naturally, some people went and took that and did it and then found amazing results. And then other people are like, oh no, it's too hard and I just want to learn from other people and that kind of stuff. Which is why the podcast, one of the main reasons the podcast was born, is now they have access to these types of conversations. They don't get quite the same benefit that I'm getting because I have the personal relationship, and I imagine we're going to have quite a few chats beyond this particular conversation. But they can at least learn from conversations like these. What's the difference for you between learning from someone, like say you could listen to someone you really admire on a podcast or read their book, and you can find people passed away thousands of years ago and you can still listen to their to their life lessons and their journeys, and in some sense stand on their shoulders, versus people that you have a direct relationship with and whom you're connected to? What's the difference between those for you, and how much of that do you think is personality versus actual benefit of knowing the person?
Yeah, I mean, one of it, I think one of the big differences is when you listen to a podcast or read a book, a historical story or whatever, it's a bit intangible, right? I mean, yeah, okay, this happened, but I don't know really how this could happen, what the environment was like. I don't know the emotions. It's hard to get emotions sometimes and understand the whole picture. I think when you have a personal connection of whatever, right? I mean, and look, it doesn't have to be someone who came before you. I mean, hell, I learned so much from my daughter, from her business career, from my son, from the things that he's doing as a young father. That's actually beneficial for me as a human being, right? From my wife, who's a giant in her own sake. But I think when you have a personal relationship, it's very tangible, right? It has the potential to truly be a two-way conversation versus, if you're reading a book, watching a movie, watching a podcast, whatever, it's a sort of like it's a one-way thing. You're observing, right? You're reading, you're observing, but it's typically a one-way channel, right? When you have a personal relationship that can be one of those giants, man, that's a gift, right? Because now you've got somebody willing to share that, and most people that share is because there's a love aspect to this. They do that because they love you. They want you to be successful. And so they're willing to listen. They're willing to maybe share a life's experience, or they're maybe willing to challenge a decision you might be making. I mean, I don't think they're just challenging it because they think they know it all. I think they're challenging it because they think it could be a better way to do something that might benefit, in my case, myself, right? I mean, so I think it's more of like an intangible environment versus a tangible where you have feedback channels both ways.
Right. As in, maybe you'll do that when you might not ever have direct access to that person. Like, I don't know, say you really look up to some celebrity or some billionaire or someone who you really admire and respect. Well, maybe you're just going to have to consume their content because you might never actually get into their presence.
Yeah.
But you're saying whenever you're able, but you go to that with a specific question that you're essentially asking, and you find where they're answering that question to make it as two-way as possible. But you're much better off having, in your argument, having a personal relationship because it will always be two-way.
Yeah, I think it's like you want to gain exposure. You want to pick up knowledge by exposing yourself to other people's experiences, right? It broadens your horizon. It potentially tells you might want to avoid certain things, or you may want to focus on certain aspects. And so you're sort of gaining exposure, right? And the exposure that you get that way is important. But it's that exposure only gives you sort of some things to consider when you're actually going through the situation or the scenario that you're trying to apply someone else's experience.
Mm.
If you've got a person who's willing to listen and to maybe even give feedback based upon what's really happening, those things you learn, the exposure that you got through the reading, the watching is important, right? Because it makes you more informed, makes you more broad with your thinking, but it's still, I mean, it's still like an analog signal. I mean, you don't have any feedback happening. It's a one directional, unidirectional type of situation. And when you have someone that's willing to converse with you about the challenge, about the opportunity, based upon their life's experiences, I think it's a whole different aspect to just reading and studying something. Now you have someone's life experience that you can leverage and apply to your given situation. I think that's why it's so important is, you got to be confident, and you can't worry about having people think, oh, they're going to think less of me because I don't know the answer to something. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, the way we learn is by saying, I don't know. Would you mind
Mm.
sharing your experience? And that's healthy, right? I mean, that's a sign of somebody who wants to grow and who wants to be great and who wants to hit their full potential. Is saying, I don't know the answer to that. Can you help me? I want to learn that. And I think today everybody's expects us to know everything because there's so much information readily available. But I think that's a farce. There's no way you can know everything. You may have access to knowledge, but that's other people's experiences. But I think without having someone to converse with about it and to apply it to your given situation, you may be selling yourself short on the opportunity ahead.
How much of that is just because someone who doesn't know you can't possibly point, or is much less likely that they're able to point out your blind spots? As in a lot of mentor type conversations I've had, like if I'm reflecting on one of the times I've been speaking to a mentor or to a peer mentor, like someone who I'm on the journey with, but they're ahead of me, or someone who I'm trying to learn from and I have a personal connection with, versus when I'm consuming something in a podcast or watching something or reading a book or whatever it is, like an autobiography or perspectives or whatever it is. I think that one of the main differences for me has been that when it's a personal connection, they're able to say, Harry, you're asking the wrong questions. Like you're focusing on these things, but they're probably the wrong things to be focusing on. Have you considered focusing on this, this, and this? I was like, oh, well, you said this a whole bunch of times, but you haven't even asked about that. Why don't we start talking about that particular thing you're not asking about? Whereas when I'm consuming someone else's knowledge that they've put out there and I don't have the two-way dialogue, it's much harder to get that perspective that I wasn't expecting but that I need. Is that
Yeah, I
something
think
you
so.
found as well?
I think so. I think it's almost like an analogy of like having putting the rudder down on a sailboat, right? If you're having a conversation and the rudder's not in the water, and then the person you're having the conversation with says, "Well, let me throw the rudder down and tilt it a little bit to the right because I think you directionally, you're off."
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you from my life's experience a little bit of guidance based upon where you're trying to get to or what the challenge is, plus my cumulative journeys experience, right? Because that's the power, right? It's the power of having a conversation is
Mm.
the cumulative journeys experience of the other person and how they take that experience and apply it to maybe your guidance, right? Your rudder. Um, because if you're just reading something, it's a one-way thing, and there's going to be no rudder thrown in the water by way of that.
Mm.
But if you have someone that's mentoring or coaching or just someone who cares and is willing to listen and give you the benefit of their perspective and their life's journey's perspective, then it can be a rudder for you. It could be a rudder that gets you going down the right path or makes a course correction for yourself.
Right. They're a guide for you, like an inspiring guide, as opposed to just someone who's inspiring.
Yeah, right, right, right. It's almost personalized to the situation that allows them to, I wouldn't say participate, but to be in the moment, that you're in. That I don't think you can get that from any kind of other media other than human beings. I mean, maybe AI there'll be some robot or some bot that
Maybe
will.
we could just upload Bobby's human consciousness into an
Yeah,
AI, and then everyone's got Bobby. Woo!
yeah, but I'm not sure I'm gonna follow that bot.
What if someone's feeling a little bit lost? So imagine that you've got someone who's coming to you going, I'm lost. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't have that much purpose. I'm not sure exactly what to focus on, or I've just done something, or I've built up a great business and I've just sold out, or I had a great career and I've been made redundant, or whatever the circumstances are, right? Um, Tried for a kid, wasn't able to have it, or whatever, right? The possibilities are endless in that sense. But someone's suddenly feeling lost. They've had something that's happened in their life that now they realize I've got to change course. Got to do a course correction. How would you suggest that someone can find or help someone identify their purpose and what they can do next. As in, what are the next steps? What's the right thing? What should someone consider to work out what they should do if they're trying to course correct or redirect their life in a one-way fashion, of course.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of folks at one point in their life, if not all people, at some point in their life, experience a feeling of being lost. I mean, my only experience is that I guess make sure that don't lose sight of your personal value. Because a lot of times when one's lost, they don't know where the center is, they don't know where they're at, right? I mean, it's like if if I think about times where people were challenged for whatever reason, sometimes they have a confidence loss, a self-confidence loss, as associated with some change in their life. So I think it starts with ensuring that we as a human never lose sight of our value individually and and how important we are to others. I think it's really important. I think the ability to determine, what is the direction or the azimuth that we should pursue next, I think is a bit of a self-reflection about what's motivating, what gives you satisfaction, what makes you happy, and what, based upon my previous experiences, will allow me to continue on my journey of achieving my potential. I think there's a little bit of introspection when one is lost. It's almost like looking at a map and determining, okay, where do I really want to go? And that's often a very hard decision, especially when you've got maybe competing drivers in your life and you may have limitations. But I think setting some kind of course is really important when one is lost. And it may be a course that has to be corrected multiple times and multiple times on top of that. But I think without some form of course when you're lost, some kind of this is my azimuth that I'm going to move down, even if it's wrong, that ensures that you have purpose and you're on the move again in a way, right? You're now said, I'm going to move from this place where I'm at now. I'm lost, and I'm going to this place. It may be a small step, it may be a gigantic step, but it is I am now a course. And I think with that, there is the possibility of the good thing about our lives is that we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. We don't know the next person we walk up to, what that might open up for us. Um, but I think if one is not in a situation where they don't, where they, as long as they see value about their being, and they've got some kind of course that they're willing to take, then I think they're on their way to finding their next stop in their journey. I think what happens is, unfortunately, is that sometimes people have a hard time with, looking inside and saying, I'm of value enough to say, I'm willing to take a chance and set another point on my life's map of where I'm going to go next. And that's risky, right? I mean, it's like when we're young, it's like whatever, we're jumping in, and there's low risk because we're motivated, we're excited to go try something and do something. And in some cases, I want to get out of this town. I want to get out of my parents' house. I want to have my own income. That's like you're motivated by that stuff. I think folks in like mid-career, something changes, it's harder, right? Because there's more baggage, there's more risk, there's more at stake. But I think it really, for me, has always been about when someone is lost or I'm lost, is that okay? Reset, look inside, make sure I'm confident about why I'm here on this earth, and then take your best stab of where you want to go next and go for it. And be willing to make corrections as you go.
Right. So the first step is to identify that you are actually lost. If you don't know where you're going, you probably already lost. You probably don't even know where you are on that map. Then you want to identify, okay, well, I'm on this map. Here I am on the map, and I need to work out, as in I am a value. I need to work out where I want to go. What's my potential? Where do I want to move towards? What's the thing that I can try and achieve to at least get me out of this spot? And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter too much what that direction is, as long as you've done enough introspection and it's aligned with your values and it's better for other people, or at least has the potential to be. And then at least you start moving. And then who knows what you're going to learn about yourself, or who you're going to meet, or what you're going to learn from others, or what opportunities are going to present themselves. That's where you're moving towards. You're now moving towards something. And then the possibilities start to accumulate, and then the potential begins to even increase. And your ability, or your potential to realize your potential, as in your ability to achieve, begins to increase as well, because you're actually doing something as
Yeah, I think
opposed
so,
to just
Harry.
staying stuck.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, it's an impossibility to think we know what's going to happen tomorrow fully,
Mm.
right? But I think purpose is about being on the move in some direction, and like you have something that you're looking to go do that you're excited about. And it may be just self-fulfilling. It may not have nothing to do with helping others, right? The purpose might be to get me out of this this lost state that I'm in and give me some movement to somewhere. And I may not know the full destination, but I know I'm moving in that direction. And it could be relationship, it could be professional work, it could be community, it could be with your kids. You know, um, the lost, fill in the blank, whatever lost is for us as human beings. We all have experienced some version of lost at some point in our lives, I'm sure.
There's one final metaphor which I'm curious if you're willing to share. Like when we've spoken before, you've mentioned the golden thread of quality in your life. Are you happy to share that, or share what you mean by that?
I think everybody's experienced, like there's amazing, you go to this restaurant, you go to this fast food, you go to this business, this hotel, and it's like, wow, like it was an amazing experience. You want to tell your family about it. You want to like, wow, I wonder how they do that. And whether it's in life or whether it's in business, there's typically going to be multiple people or elements involved with success. And in our business, there could be 6 or 8 different people end to end that have to do something that affects the ultimate grade of success. And for us, and when I talk about the golden thread of quality, it is about a golden thread that is unbroken. It is about each person that has a role to play along that thread, which is woven throughout our organization, that results in either a happy or a disappointed customer. We cannot have any breaks in that thread, meaning that each person has to do the best of their ability, and that task that makes up that part of the thread needs to be done to the best of their ability. If each person does that and understands that there is a relationship in the outcome, what they're doing in their part, and what the next person does, and the next person does, that we could have the greatest technical person in the world, but if the way we invoice or if the way we enter in the initial information, if those are not done to the best of our abilities, then the organization actually fails, right?
Mm.
Or, or
Yeah,
is
sure.
or is stressed to the point of, in our case, we lose money, we lose customers. We're not a customer that we're not going to have customers telling their friends about us, because it isn't intangible. It's not like if you want to differentiate yourself, the way to do that is through quality, right? I mean, yeah, we can do it on price, but I mean, how long is that's going to last? But the way you differentiate is to be better in the eyes of the customer every time. And I think, the golden thread of quality is also something that we apply in our lives, and, how we interact with people, and and pass information along, and how we listen. Um, and because I think if we have good relationships with others, um, then that tends to extend itself. And if that person has a good relationship based upon their experience with me, and the next person has a good relationship and a good experience with the person's way they were treated, then in a way it becomes a golden thread based upon, hey, this is the way we do it. This is the way we communicate. This is the way we deliver our goods in life. So I think it's an important thing. It's a simple concept of everybody just every day doing the best in their particular part of the work. And it's hard. It's hard to get every single element of an organization, performing to the best of their ability. It really is hard. Um, but all it takes is one little tiny break in that thread to result in, a disappointed, unhappy outcome. So that's the way I think about it. I think about it in a simple metaphor of a golden thread that, when it is woven throughout the company and it is solid and it's throughout the organization, then it's something that differentiates us. It allows us to be able to do that high quality every day. It's not something we just do it on some days. It's just it's part of how we operate. Um, so I don't know if that helps, Harry, but that's the concept.
Thank you for sharing it. Maybe as a little bit of a summary, we were talking in the beginning specifically about success, and we were talking about what is success, and you're like, well, what's potential? How do you achieve your full potential? It's a journey, right? You might not achieve full success, but when you're trying to identify your potential, you're saying, if I identify what's possible, then next question is, why not me? It doesn't matter if that's in school or business or parenting or marriage or friendships or in something you're doing in your career or in your health or fitness. What does good look like, and why can't I achieve that? And you gave examples. You were talking about, well, what's the best part of being a Boy Scout? Like, what's the full potential of a Boy Scout as an Eagle Scout? And what's the best from being in wrestling at school? Well, instead of average, let's start winning some competitions. And if you're talking about in the military, well, you could be an infantry officer, or you can get to the Ranger program. Can your marriage last a lifetime? You gave quite a few examples. And there's something about just realizing your own self potential, or what's the ultimate in self-realization. And when you've got all these different areas in your life which you want to make sure that you're realizing your potential in, you can't look at them as individual parts or individual components, because that will just break the whole system of your life. And instead, you got to make sure that you're measuring it across everything. Well, what's the best that I can do in line with my values across all of these? And how can I continue to give my best at each of those so I can continue to learn how to be even better for the future? And why can't I be the one that people turn to and want me to be the leader, is one of the questions that you're asking. So you're looking at it in terms of, how can I achieve what I believe is my full potential, but then how do I measure that externally, as well as continue to allow it to reinforce my internal view. And when it comes to conflict, as the example, or what we were discussing, it's like, well, where do you put your energy in? Like, what's going to be the most important thing for you? Can you, if you're having conflicts with other people, can you just calm the waters or just lower the temperature, and then just find a way to continue to understand each other as best as possible, which sounds exceptionally similar to when you're talking about success. You're talking about conflicts in terms of yourself, like where are you going to be spread out towards? Well, can I just take a deep breath, find out where I am on the map, and then just decide where I want to go forward? And how do I manage those internal conflicts, which I'm experiencing as well? And so then we spoke a lot about your journey and the different things that you did. We didn't manage to talk about Africa, although that sounds like it was an interesting part of your journey as well. You got very far from home before you came all the way back. And then we spoke about, what if someone's really feeling lost? And just remember that you're important to yourself, you're important to others. Who knows what? Do some introspection and work out what's going to make you satisfied, what's going to make you happy, what's going to help you achieve your potential. And even if you're wrong, at least you're moving forward. Those are kind of the key messages I've received from you in this conversation. Is there anything else that you want to add or share based on that?
I think, Harry, you've probably captured it. I mean, we're on this journey. You're trying to pick up experiences as you go. I just know that it's important to always be looking at the situations through the eyes of others. Sometimes, we lose that and we get in a situation where we haven't taken the time to truly be empathetic, and that affects our ability to work with others. And I just believe in having a frame of mind of, why not me? And fill in the blank. Why not me to do that? Why not me to volunteer? Why not me to achieve that level? Why can't I just throw my hand up and go do that? Make a difference, as I learned as a child. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's like there's no magic in any of this stuff. It's just a frame of mind. And I'm just always sort of leaning forward in my life, wanting to do more adventures, more time to be with friends and family, and it's a journey, and it's an exciting journey. So the exciting part is everything we do in our lives, gets passed on. And I hope that the things that I've done in my life thus far, it's benefits my son, my daughter, my daughter-in-law, my wife, my grandchildren, because that's how you live forever. We're physically going to be gone, but the way you live forever is by having those experiences shared and passed down. And you never know, they may look at you one day as a giant, and they continue on the journey.
So I hope you received a whole lot of value from engaging in that conversation. What were the key takeaways for you? What can you schedule in your life right now to make sure that the time you just invested into listening to this exceptional conversation with this amazing mentor and this amazing individual is time that wasn't misused, but was time that you've allocated properly to enhancing your life and improving it? Whatever it is, schedule it now, practice it now, be the successful person you're meant to be, live with purpose.